How can you get the most out of your Social Security benefits? Coming up, some tips and tricks and some good how-to advice from Andy Landis, best-selling author of Social Security, The Inside Story. He's our guest next on Your Money Matters, presented by the Presley Group.
And welcome back to Your Money Matters, your weekly peek inside the complex financial world. You listen to the show so you can retire with peace of mind. And what better people to tell you about that than Christy Smith, president of the Presley Group, and Matt Kennedy. Christy and Matt are experts at helping you plan for a successful retirement. They teach their clients how to position their retirement money to avoid losses due to stock market conditions. They have helped hundreds of clients achieve their retirement goals, and they can help you. Here are your hosts for Your Money Matters, Matt Kennedy and Christy Smith.
Good morning. Pleasure to have you with us here on Your Money Matters, presented each and every week by the Presley Group. We have a real special guest, the author of Social Security, The Inside Story. Andy Landis will join us here in just a moment. By the way, I want to mention that today we're giving away copies of his best-selling book, Social Security, The Inside Story. In a moment, I'll tell you how to get your free copy of his book. At the Presley Group, we are retirement specialists. Christy founded the Presley Group over 16 years ago, and for over 16 years, she's been helping people just like you, and I've been working with her now for almost 5 years, helping people just like you have a safe and peaceful retirement. When you retire, we know you want to spend time with the grandkids, not all of your time having to watch CNBC, worried about the market. Our strategies allow you to share in market gains in the good years, but most importantly, to always have protection from stock market losses. Yes, we can preserve and protect your retirement nest egg. We can grow your money safely without you having to fear a major market downturn. Because we know, and you know it too, that major market downturns wreck retirements. Our motto at the Presley Group is financial security in any economy. And we're able to offer that to you because we're insurance agents. We use great, strong insurance companies and the guarantees that their plans and their strategies afford to let you share in market gains in the good years, but always offering you protection in the bad years. We always offer a free, no-obligation retirement checkup, just a chance for us to get together for an hour and talk about your circumstances, talk about your hopes, your goals, your fears, your dreams, and then we start working to come up with a plan to help give you that guaranteed security of your money during retirement. And if you need a retirement income, we can certainly help with that too. We are retirement income specialists. If you want to take that lump sum at retirement and turn it into a guaranteed income that neither you nor your spouse can outlive, we can show you how to do that. We can show you how to get guaranteed, contractually guaranteed a payout of your money so that neither you nor your spouse have to worry about running out of money in retirement. Now, today, in just a moment, we're going to talk to Andy Landis. He is the author of the book Social Security, The Inside Story, updated, by the way, for 2012. And for those of you who call and schedule your free one-on-one consultation, we'll give you a complimentary copy of Andy's book. So keep in mind the number is 225-791-5773. That's 225-791-5773 or 1-800-791-5773. Just call us up at the office, schedule your free 1-hour consultation, and we will be more than happy to give you a free copy of the book, Social Security, The Inside Story. Okay, let's welcome in Andy Landis, author of the best-selling book, Social Security, The Inside Story. I stumbled across an article that Andy had written as one of the retire mentors at MarketWatch.com, and a very eye-catching article. Maximize your Social Security? ? Not so fast. Andy, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Why wouldn't I want to maximize my Social Security?
Good morning, Matt. That's a great question because, you pay into it your whole life, and then you're thinking, don't I want to get as many dollars back out of it as I can? But there's a trade-off. There's a catch. There are a lot of cool maximization strategies. Some of them are a little exotic. withdraw and refile, file and suspend, restricted application, kind of interesting stuff, and they're all in my book. But there's always a trade-off, and the catch is you're postponing your dollars up front to get more dollars in the long run. And those dollars you lose up front might make it not worth it to postpone the Social Security. Yeah. You know, the number one thing is, can you postpone Social Security? Most of the people I know are going, I need it now. I lost my job, or I've been looking forward to retirement for years. I need to get on with it. I need that Social Security to make ends meet. So it's a little silly to say, hey, if you postpone for 8 years, you'll get more money after 20 years. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. In your article, you very succinctly point out some very, very meaningful considerations if you're going to think about when to take Social Security, because that is the ultimate question, right? When do I begin drawing it? Or when do I begin taking half of my spouse's, for example? You say you have to look at things like life expectancy, the near-term shortfall, marital status, estate planning, taxes. Let's walk through those if we can. First of all, life expectancy. What factor does that play?
Yes, sir. Let's say that you are ill at this point. You may not have a long life expectancy because of family history, something like that. Well, then why would you give yourself a shortfall in the short term to get more money in the long term when there may not be a long term? I hate to put it that way.
You may not be here to collect it.
You may not live long enough to get more money out of the system. So a lot of people who are, say, sickly or they just don't expect to live as long, it just doesn't make sense to look for the long term.
So you kind of have to look at your family history. And if your mom and dad lived into their 90s, right, maybe it makes sense for you to put off taking Social Security. But if you've got illness right now, or you've got a history of passing away in your 70s or late 60s, maybe you take it right now.
Yeah, I'm kind of wrestling with that because Landis men do not live very long in history, so maybe I better get what I can early. I haven't decided on that yet.
Yeah. Of course, medical improvements may be to your benefit, though.
Right. Thank goodness. And then, of course, the next factor is, can you live with that near-term shortfall? Do you have a source of income to get you to age 66 or ideally 70 to collect more Social Security in the long run? Now, the logical thing is if you have a job, if you're working, you like it, it's good for you, or maybe you've started a second job or a second career, then you can postpone the Social Security and it makes good financial sense. By the way, I love that term. Can't come up with it. Never mind. So, do you have a source of income for the near-term shortfall, and what is that source of income? For example, if to get to a later Social Security age, you're drawing money from an IRA, your financial advisor may shudder at that because there's 3 big strikes against you. If you hit your IRA early in order to postpone your Social Security, you're paying more in taxes than you would under Social Security.
Right.
You're denying yourself compounding from the dollars that you're pulling out. They can't compound anymore. And you have to pull more and more out from it for inflation as years go by, where Social Security automatically inflates. So,
Andy, the way you've written it in the article at MarketWatch is well written. It says earlier Social Security could mean more savings later. Waiting for Social Security can actually be bad for your savings health.
Right.
Because like you just said, you may be withdrawing more than you can really afford to withdraw.
Right. It may be bad for you in the long run. Do you want the savings to be drained up front so you have lower savings later, but you have higher Social Security? Or is the other way around better for you individual? Take the income early but have more savings later in life. It's an individual question.
It's Andy Landis with us, the website Andy Landis, LANDIS.biz. He's author of Social Security, The Inside Story, which, by the way, has been updated for 2012. All the latest info is in there. And then I think one of the biggies has to be marital status. You have to take that into consideration, don't you?
It's a huge factor, and the reason is demographics. If you look at any given couple and their life expectancy as a couple, in other words, I hate to be blunt, but when does the second person pass away? Their life expectancy as a couple is longer than the life expectancy of either of them as an individual. Example, life expectancy for a couple in their mid-60s is 92 years old. That changes the whole time frame for Social Security maximization. And it also opens up other possibilities for maximization. There's an exotic form of filing where you file for 50% spouse benefits at 66 and then file for your own at 70, and you get 132% payment instead of 100%. So it's worth doing if you have a long enough life expectancy, and the couple does. So that changes everything. If you're just planning for one person, which a lot of people are, that's a different situation than if you're planning for a couple.
Andy, in your years and years of covering Social Security benefits, writing about them, educating people about them, what is the single biggest mistake that you see that married couples make when it comes to figuring out Social Security withdrawals?
I think probably the biggest mistake is not considering the extra lifespan that you have if there's two of you. And what does the survivor have to go with them? Mm-hmm. So, example, if I file early for Social Security, my wife, Kay, would be shortchanged when I pass away. She will not get more than I get when I pass away. So if I take an earlier, lower payment from Social Security, I'm locking that in not just for my lifespan, but for my survivor as well. So it's important to consider who gets what after the first death, and you don't want to leave somebody, holding the bag, so to speak, if you love them.
Yeah, let's talk about taxes, too. That T word has to be out there, and taxes are, of course, creeping up. And you write, if the alternative to Social Security is withdrawals from a traditional IRA, every dollar withdrawn will be taxable. Expand on that.
Sure. Any money you draw from a traditional IRA is 100% taxable at the point you withdraw it. Not talking about a Roth, but a traditional IRA where most of our retirement savings is today. So anything you take out of there is taxable. Well, so what? Isn't the same true of Social Security? No. Even for high-income retirees, at least 15% of the Social Security is tax-free. So depending on your tax picture, it might make sense to take the Social Security and get the tax benefits of drawing that rather than taking money from your IRA. Again, it's an individual question.
Yeah.
I'm not a financial planner, but I work with financial planners all the time, and I love it when I hear somebody ask a planner, when should I file for Social Security? Yeah. And they say, I don't know because I don't know all your situation. Mm-hmm. I need to know your tax situation. Are you going to get an inheritance? Are you going to sell a house later? It's a million questions that go into it.
Andy Landis with us, the book Social Security, The Inside Story. His website, again, is andylandis.biz. You can read his columns at marketwatch.com. And today we are offering a complimentary copy of Andy's book, Social Security, The Inside Story, updated for 2012. All you have to do is call our office at 791-5773 and schedule a free, no-obligation, complimentary retirement checkup, just so we can sit down and talk with you about what your needs are, help you make that Social Security decision, and help you safeguard and protect your retirement portfolio from all the market volatility. So call now at 791-5773. That's 791-5773. Schedule that 1-hour complimentary retirement checkup, and we'll give you a free copy of the book, Social Security, The Inside Story by our guest, Andy Landis. You also write, Andy, about estate planning, that estate planning has to be a consideration when you talk about Social Security and when to take it. Expound on that.
Yeah, in fact, I do train attorneys to talk about to learn about how Social Security figures into the estate plan. Social Security has built-in survivor payments. If I pass away, Kay, my wife, could draw Social Security on my record or on her own, whichever one pays better. So that's important, but it's also important on your Social Security maximization picture. For example, if you maximize your long-term Social Security, that's great because you're maximizing it for your survivor also. Mm-hmm. But if I take Social Security early, that might maximize my savings that I can pass on to whoever I want. So how big will my estate be when I pass it on to, say, my kids? My kids won't get anything from Social Security because they're grown and they're healthy. Not from my Social Security anyway. So the fact is, if I want to pass something on to family members, then I need to preserve my savings, not my Social Security. Mm-hmm. So again, I'm not saying it's one decision or the other. Everybody's going to be individual on that. But it's a consideration. You need to consider, gee, what do I want to pass on to others, and what will my spouse have for my Social Security?
And Andy, last but not least, I know one of the big considerations you mentioned in working with financial planners, one of the big considerations has to be, if I begin taking Social Security early, let's say age 62, well, I get dinged if I'm taking it early if I've got too much income. That has to be a gigantic consideration, right?
It is. The only kind of income that would reduce your Social Security is work income, either self-employment or employment income, when you're under full retirement age, which is currently 66. So if I take it early and I get a job, I'm going to lose some of my Social Security. So that is a factor. Gee, if I can get by on my work income, my Social Security just keeps getting bigger in the background if I don't draw it. So that is a factor. How much Social Security do I want to draw? On the other hand, if my life plan or the way the dice have fallen puts me in a situation where all I have is part-time income, maybe I could supplement that income with some Social Security coming in at 62. So again, it's individual, but it's a factor. And you brought that up, and I didn't. Good for you, Matt.
Well, and then we go back to the fact, I have parents, and they went through that same struggle,
Yeah.
But then you go back, Andy, to where the conversation began today. That's life expectancy. So maybe if you've got, low life expectancy, it makes sense to go ahead and start collecting at 62, even though you may get dinged because you have earned income. But if you can live a long time, Andy, we need to come up with that computer that's going to tell us exactly how long we're going to live. If you and I invent that, we'll be done, right?
It's true. And to put it bluntly, if you tell me your death age, if you give me your death date, I can tell you when to file for Social Security. We don't know that, so we have to play the odds.
What are some good websites that you recommend? I know your website, andylandis.biz, has good info, but what are some maybe calculators we can use that you rely on? There's
some interesting companies that try to take into account all of these different variables and give you a number, a date. One of them is socialsecuritychoices.com. That's all one word, socialsecuritychoices.com. Another one, and you can get these, you get the titles here, maximizemysocialsecurity.com and socialsecuritysolutions.com. These three websites will ask you for the important data and then give you options to maximize your Social Security for a fee. It's a fairly reasonable fee, $20 to $40. You can get the numbers that you want to make your own decisions around this important question.
Our guest, Andy Landis, and the book is called Social Security, The Inside Story. We would like to offer you a complimentary copy of Andy's book. It's very, very good information in there. Simply call us and schedule your free one-on-one consultation, and we will get you a copy of Andy's book at that meeting. Call us at 791-5773. That's 791-5773. It's a free, no-obligation appointment. We like to call it a retirement checkup. So we can sit and talk about where you are with your retirement planning, or if you're already retired, help you protect and preserve your retirement nest egg, and help you learn how to maximize your own Social Security benefits. So to get that free copy of Andy's book, simply call us, set up that free consultation, and we'll give you a copy of the book at our meeting. Again, 791-5773 is our office number. We'll be back with more of Your Money Matters in just a moment here on Talk 107.3 FM. Good morning and welcome back to Your Money Matters. Happy Labor Day weekend, by the way. On behalf of Christy Smith and the entire staff of the Presley Group, Eva and Cheryl and Taylor, good to have you with us, and have a safe and wonderful Labor Day weekend. Enjoy the time with your family. On this Labor Day weekend, we're running a best of show, and what we've done is taken some of our best interviews from the past, and we're playing them back for you. Last segment, of course, we heard from Andy Landis. Andy has authored the book, Social Security, The Inside Story. And again, if you'd like to make an appointment with us to come in, sit down for a free consultation, we've got a copy of Andy's book that we'll offer you as a complimentary gift. One of our favorite guests on the show is Bob Powell, Robert Powell, who writes for MarketWatch.com. He's also the editor of Retirement Weekly. It's a newsletter that you can subscribe to via MarketWatch.com. It was a month or so ago. Bob wrote a column, The 12 Things to Consider as You Plan for Retirement. And I had a chance to talk with him about preparing for calling it quits. Now, most people know a thing or two about retirement, but Robert Powell points out there's about 12 things you really need to know before you decide to go ahead and call it quits. Bob Powell is with us. Robert, good morning.
Good morning.
We may not be able to cover all 12, but let's go through, say, the top 6 or 7 things that someone really has to consider before they completely call it quits.
Sure. So I guess the big two are, one, are you ready mentally? And then 2, can you afford to? So the first one is, are you ready mentally? And there are a couple of good reasons why you would be ready mentally. One is, the time is right. You just know it in your heart of hearts that you're done working.
Mm-hmm.
2, you have more compelling things to do. I was with a gentleman the other day who's retired, and he wanted to spend more time with his grandkids. And there's no amount of money that anyone could pay him that would prevent him from spending time with his grandkids. So that's a compelling thing for him to do. And then the third thing is, your job might be changing. Perhaps you're working for the defense industry and, you're about to get furloughed and you have 32 years of service in and you can get 70% of your pension. Well, that might be the perfect time to think about, retiring.
Mm-hmm.
There are other reasons why you might not retire, too. And, one of them has to do with whether you can afford to retire. So that's the second big question. And, there you really have to sit down and get a sense of, what are your sources of income in retirement, and what are your expenses? And if your income in retirement is greater than your expenses, well, that's a good reason. That means that you can afford to do it. If, on the other hand, when you do all this number crunching and your expenses are greater than your income, I'd say you can't afford to retire.
Exactly. Well, one of the big questions that has to be asked that you point out in the article, 12 things to consider before you retire, is what about Social Security? When should I apply for it? When should my spouse take her benefit or his benefit? It gets complicated, right?
It does, and the common conventional wisdom right now is to not take it at 62, and to not even take it at full retirement age, but to delay taking it for as long as possible to age 70, and that accomplishes 2 things. One is you'll get the largest possible Social Security benefit that you can, and then if you're married and you predecease your spouse, your widow will also get the largest possible survivor's benefit, and that's really important because one of the things that happens in this country is that husbands typically predecease their wives, their
mm-hmm.
spouses, and widows tend to be among the greatest. About 30% of widows live in poverty, and there are 2 reasons for that. One, because their husbands took Social Security early and they reduced their benefit, and 2, if they had a defined benefit plan, they typically took a single life annuity instead of a joint survivor, which means that their income is greatly reduced because of the decisions that their husbands made over how much to take and when to take their either Social Security or defined benefit pension plan.
We're talking to Bob Powell, MarketWatch.com, editor of Retirement Weekly. 12 questions to ask before you retire. Bob, the stock market's been great. I mean, we've hit all-time highs. We've recovered from the nastiness of 08 and 09. I guess one of the questions has to be, how do I then invest my retirement savings? If I tiptoe into the market, some would say I may be tiptoeing in at the top. A lot of concern there, too, right?
There is, and so retirees always have to strike that balance between investing for growth because they need to sort of keep pace or outpace inflation, but also invest for safety so that they have the income or the principal or both to support their standard of living. So one of the things that I'd like to tell people is to think about investing as a layering concept, so that you would invest such that you're creating income or have principal such that it covers your standard of living, whatever that may be, and then invest the difference for growth so that you keep pace with inflation. So yes, the market is high. Yes, people are cautious about going back into it. But if what you have is invested in such a way that it's supporting your standard of living, and the money is not at risk, not in the stock market, that's good. If you have money left over and you put it in the stock market, invest with an eye toward growth in income or dividends or something that is safe enough so that you won't lose the money that you need to support yourself if you happen to live a long life.
Put another way, you're saying make darn sure that you know that you've got some mailbox money, right? That you can go down the driveway once a month, get the Social Security check, although that's direct deposit now, and maybe some sort of guaranteed payout to cover your basic needs so that you know you're not going to fall into a pit in retirement if your savings go down.
That's exactly it, Matt. I mean, one of the big things that people have to think about in retirement is you have to replace your paycheck that you got from work with a paycheck from other sources. One of those paychecks will be Social Security. If you're lucky, one of them will be a defined benefit plan. And if not, the paycheck has to come from your other investable assets, a 401k, an IRA, a taxable account. And you really don't want that paycheck to vary, and you want it to last for as long as you live.
How do you feel about long-term care coverage, Bob?
Well, I think, this is one of those products that people, if you're not able to self-insure, if you're not wealthy enough to cover what your potential long-term care costs would be, I think you have to look at long-term care insurance because it is perhaps the one insurance, like home insurance, like car insurance, like health insurance, that is there when you need it. It's not necessarily expense because it's a risk management tool and a very vital one. Again, if a healthcare shock is one of the big risks that you'll face in retirement, and if you don't have a way to mitigate that risk, you'll be in big trouble. Again, healthcare shocks are one of the leading causes of bankruptcy in this country. So without long-term care insurance, you're putting yourself and your family and your heirs at risk.
Last but not least, it's easy to talk about the numbers and the products. Bottom line is retiring is really as much an emotional decision as it is a financial decision, right?
Retirement is hard work. There's no getting around it. And one of the things that you have to think about is the emotional aspects of it. And one of the important things about retiring is how do you age successfully in retirement? And so there are three things that you need to do. You need to keep exercising, you need to keep dieting and eating well, and most importantly, you need to retain your social contacts, because if you lose part of that network, that group, that club, those people that you are in touch with, you tend to sort of not age as successfully as you might. So it can be a great experience, but you need to work at it. You can't be a couch potato in retirement.
All right, last but not least, I've got to brag on you for a moment. We spoke, I want to say back in 2009, maybe May of 2010. Bob, you had written an article then saying it was time to say goodbye to the so-called 4% rule. Article in the Wall Street Journal this week, say goodbye to the 4% rule. So were you a prophet ahead of your time?
No, I think what people are now realizing is that what we realized 2 years ago but didn't want to admit is fast becoming a reality. That for many years people thought you could take 4% out per year, that your money would last 30 years through markets up and down. But I think in this low interest rate environment, what people are beginning to realize is that 4% is a very aggressive withdrawal rate. And the truth of the matter is that if you want your money to last 30 years using a withdrawal rate, using risky assets, that it will have to be on the order of 2% if you want your money to last 30 years.
It's Bob Powell from MarketWatch.com, editor of Retirement Weekly. Do you have a plan for retirement income? We are seeing more and more people come into the Presley Group saying the number one concern I have is not outliving my money. Oh, there's a lot of concern about the stock market, wars and rumors of wars and companies and their profits and their losses. All of those things affect Wall Street. But ultimately, do you want the stock market to determine how much income you can have in retirement? Will you have enough income during retirement? What investment vehicles are you planning to rely on for your income? At the Presley Group, we can show you how our strategies give you guaranteed retirement income that neither you nor your spouse can outlive. So jot down the number, write down the website, give us a call. Schedule your free one-on-one consultation. We'll be more than happy to create a retirement income plan for you, to help you by taking a portion of your savings and putting it into a strategy that guarantees you retirement income. Our number is 791-5773. That's 791-5773. 5773. Our office is located off Veterans Boulevard in Denham Springs, right off of I-12, easy to get to. Visit the website, safemoneyplan.net. You can schedule your free one-on-one consultation directly from the website at safemoneyplan.net. Back with more of Your Money Matters in a moment.
Are you concerned about the recent stock market pullback? If so, call the Presley Group. This is Christy Smith, owner of the Presley Group. We can show you how to protect your money from any and all stock market losses while letting you share in market gains in the good years. Call today for a free, no-obligation appointment. Call 791-5773. That's 791-5773. Or visit safemoneyplan.net.
Welcome back to this best of Your Money Matters, presented by the Presley Group here on Talk 107.3 FM on this Labor Day weekend. It was approximately 3 weeks ago I had the chance to talk to Mark Holbert. Mark is the publisher and editor of the Holbert Financial Digest. He is also a writer for MarketWatch.com. The first half of the year, up until about mid-June, had been really great for the stock market. Even on into July, the market had been up. But we've seen a lot of volatility, a lot, in the last couple of months. So I sat down and spoke with Mark Holbert about what is coming down the road for the remainder of 2013.
Well, it's a good question. What I did is I went back and I looked at what the Dow Jones Industrial Average has done back to 1896, which is when it was created, and I looked to see if there was any correlation between what it did in the first half of the year and what it did in the second half of the year, and I found that there is no correlation whatsoever. Now, that's either good news or bad news, depending on whether you like to see the glass is half full or is half empty.
Yeah.
The good news is that people have been worried that because the market has done so well in the first half of the year that a pullback is now more likely, on the theory that, after all, the market actually in the first half of the year made more money than is the average return for the entire 12 months of the calendar. So that we perhaps have gotten ahead of ourselves, and that's why some people say, well, that means we have an above-average chance of a decline in the second half of the year. I don't find support for that. And yet, on the other hand, here's the bad news, I don't show that there is any momentum in the market, any expectation that just because we had a good first half of the year that means we have an above-average chance of letting it continue for the second half of the year. And basically, to give a little more theoretical explanation, basically the market is always forward-looking. It's going to be discounting what's coming down the pike, looking at what corporate earnings will be, not just this quarter or next quarter, but they look out several quarters, a year or two, in fact, according to researchers. And so in the beginning of this year, they were looking out, after all, for the first several quarters. They liked what they see, and the market went up. Now it's a brand-new ballgame. It's looking out, and there's just no relationship between what it saw 6 months ago with what perhaps it might be seeing now. That means the market could go up, but it will have nothing to do with the fact that it went up in the first half of the year.
Mark Holbert with us. Mark, and I guess the real wild card here is the Fed. It's Ben Bernanke. You know, what was it back in June? Bernanke just hinted that he might take his foot off the gas pedal and ease up the bond buying. Boom, we saw a 400-point drop in one day. But then he comes back earlier this week and says, well, I won't make any moves like that, more than likely, until unemployment reaches 6.5%. The market loves this easy money, doesn't it?
It really does. And, of course, that's the game everyone is playing. They're trying to figure out what Ben Bernanke is going to do. I'd say the speculation right now is that Mr. Bernanke has to acknowledge that at some point the foot will come off the pedal, but it's not going to be anytime soon, and when he does, it's not going to be very dramatic. So he's just basically, the way I like to think of it is that years ago, during the banking crisis, the banking regulators would do what's known as a stress test. They would do hypotheticals and see, okay, if this or that happens, would the banks be able to survive and not have to get more government money to bail them out? Basically, what Mr. Bernanke is doing here is a stress test for the markets. He's not going to do anything, but he says, maybe I'm going to start thinking about it. I mean, you can't get much more tentative than that. And he says, okay, let's see how much the market will react. And we saw how the market reacted. He says, okay, we've got the information we need. Now we're going to go back and continue to priming the pump like we've been doing for years.
Mark Holbert with us. He is the founder of Holbert Financial Digest in North Carolina. He's been tracking the advice of more than 160 different financial newsletters since 1980. And if you would like to learn more about the Holbert Financial Digest, you can find out more online at marketwatch.com. You recently wrote an article, Mark, where you talked about the price-to-earnings ratios. You know, we've been so obsessed with corporate profits and what's happening with interest rates, what's happening with the Fed and bond buying. We may have gotten our eye off the real price, PE ratios. And you write that you think PE ratios suggest that stocks might be a bit overvalued now.
Well, that's right. Now, the PE ratio basically is a price-to-earnings ratio. It basically says, okay, let's look at the price of either a stock or the market as a whole and divide it by the earnings of either that particular company or the overall market. And averaging it over many, many decades, that average turns out to be around 15 or 16. So basically, the market says on average, I'm willing to pay 16 times as much as what a company earns per share in any given year. So that's sort of the standard that we can use to look and see whether the market is over or undervalued. Right now, the market is at about 18, depending on which market average you look at and which earnings estimates you're taking into account and so forth. So that's not an exact science, but that suggests the market is moderately overvalued. Now, the good news in that, if there is good news, is that valuations exert only a weak gravitational pull on the market over any given short-term period. Basically, markets take into account valuations over very, very long periods of time, and indeed, that's where the bad news comes in. If you were to try to make a 10-year forecast based on the current valuations of the market, you'd have to guess that the market will provide a lower-than-average return over the next 10 years. But that doesn't mean the market can't continue to have very impressive returns for the next 6 to 12 months. The market history is filled with examples of where the market will be overvalued and continue to become even more overvalued. So this is not any short-term prediction, I hasten to say. It simply means that the long term is perhaps not as bright, especially not as bright as it was in March of 2009 when this bull market began, when, of course, that same PE measure was suggesting that the future was much brighter.
You know, Alan Greenspan was often called the maestro, but Bernanke really has to be the maestro, doesn't he? Because if he doesn't massage this just right, it could set off panic in the market if he undoes the bond buying too quickly, correct?
I think that's true. It's a very, very tricky game that he's playing. On the other hand, I think you were saying earlier you have to keep your eyes on the prize, and that's earnings. And I think people will, of course, sell at the moment he makes any noises to the effect that he might be taking the foot off the pedal. On the other hand, I think people will, jump first and then ask questions later. And when they start asking questions, they may like what they see because, after all, the only reason he'll be taking the foot off the pedal is that economic news is actually stronger and more positive than previously expected. And indeed, the signs are that the economy, no one would ever say the economy is in great shape right now, but that the recovery is perhaps gaining on its own steam now rather than just relying on what the Fed is doing. And that is the kind of news that allows the Fed to start easing up. And I think in the end, investors will say, you know what, I perhaps reacted too hastily. Yes, the market will plunge if Bernanke doesn't play this game just exactly right. But, I'm wondering if that might not be a good buying opportunity for people who are willing to take the risk, because the only reason, as I say, that there would be that kind of tapering would be because the economy actually is stronger than we had thought.
And I would think for some people, rising interest rates are a good thing. Some people might like to see a little better than point something in their money market account, right?
Well, that's right. We have to remember that there are many, many casualties to what the Federal Reserve's policy has been for the last 5 years, and one of them is all of those people who live on fixed income and need their interest on their savings account. Basically, the Fed has said we do not want people saving money. We want to encourage them to go out and take risks, go out and buy a house or put your money in the market, and eventually people will get that message. But I don't think it's a good thing for the long term to have people not saving money, obviously. And secondly, it's just been devastating to many people, especially in the retirement years, who are living on fixed incomes, who are just not getting the kind of interest that they were otherwise planning for. So that would be a good thing. And the other thing to point out when you say that interest rate increases may not be a bad thing is that one of the most reliable indicators that economists look at to try to predict whether we're going to go into a recession is what's known as the yield curve, which basically compares long-term interest rates with short-term interest rates. And it turns out that when long-term rates are much higher than short-term rates, and by the way, that's the condition we exist right now, it's called a steep yield curve, that's actually one of the most positive leading indicators that we're not about to slip into recession. When it's just the opposite, where short-term rates are actually higher than long-term rates, that's actually a very, very bad sign. That's known as an inverted yield curve. You'll sometimes hear economists talk about that.
Yeah.
And that would suggest that we're have a greater, a great chance of slipping into recession. The New York Fed has a page of its website. I put the link in one of my recent columns. You can go to it. But basically, based on where interest rates are, even after what we saw in the month of June with higher rates, they're gauging the probability of recession over the next 12 months at only 2.5%, which we're hoping, of course, that they're right.
Again, that's Mark Hulbert from the Hulbert Financial Digest and MarketWatch.com with his market outlook for the remainder of this year. Listen, if all of this volatility and these recent sharp downturns have you concerned, call us, 791-5773, or visit safemoneyplan.net. We can sit down with you and show you how, using our fixed indexed annuity strategies, you're able to protect and preserve your retirement nest egg. Remember, it's about protection and potential. You don't have to put your money in the stock market at risk to share in the gains. Our plans give you gains when the market's rising, protect you when the market's falling. Call us to learn more at 791-5773. Back with more of Your Money Matters in just a moment. Welcome back. Closing segment this Labor Day weekend for Your Money Matters. I'm Matt Kennedy, joined now by Christy Smith on this Labor Day weekend. Christy, we talk about people working, people laboring, saving money, building for retirement, and yet we've seen a couple of surveys, the most recent from the Employee Benefit Research Institute, where 52% of Americans said that they have a real fear of running out of money during retirement. Very sobering as we talk about Americans working and laboring and saving for retirement, and yet slightly more than half of Americans they're deeply concerned about not having enough money during retirement.
Well, and we've actually helped hundreds and hundreds of clients. The other day we were moving files into our new office, and you realize how many clients you actually have when you have to move their files.
Yeah, box after box, yeah.
Yeah, I told Eva, we were talking about it, and I said, Eva, how many clients exactly do we have? And, she said, it's in the 800 number, and it made my heart smile because it made me realize, 800 families we've impacted. It's a joyful feeling to know you've made a difference in their lives, because that's what we do. We specialize in, giving you a roadmap for retirement.
Christy, we often meet with people who, quite honestly, and I'm not fussing, but they've never even thought about what number they're going to need in retirement. ING has done a great job. The great insurance company ING has done a great job of making people aware that they've got to have a number, correct? Remember the commercials? Yeah. People walking number? Around with the orange number?
Yeah,
but they kind of missed it a little bit, though. And I know what they were going for, but, one guy had $600,000, another guy had $2 million, and they're walking around, don't let your number get hurt and all of that. But what they didn't do, which is what we do, is we take that number and turn it into a guaranteed retirement income. Because let's face it, Christy, no matter how big the number is, unless you're a gazillionaire, a market downturn, something happening with the economy unforeseen, debt, taxes, terrorist attacks, all of those things can bruise and batter your number. But if you have a contractual guarantee that number turns into a retirement income, then you've got real protection. You've got real promises and guarantees.
Well, I was speaking with one of our clients, Matt. It was actually both of our clients yesterday on the phone. And, they've been our clients now for a couple of years. And one of the things that made me feel so good was that, they explained to me how they really don't have to worry anymore about their income. I mean, they did not need income at the current time. They were looking for income replacement if something happened to one of the spouses.
Right.
But they're on a pension plan where that pension's going to be considerably lower if something happens to him. And it gave them great peace of mind because they're facing some health issues now. And that was one of the things they were so concerned about. If something happened, to the husband, what was going to happen to the wife? And so they don't have to worry about that any longer. They have a plan that's got contractual guarantees to kick on that income at any time. And it's really creating what I call a successful retirement. Successful retirement means you don't have to worry about economic conditions that you are not in control of. Let's face it, we are not in control of how much the government spends.
No, we're not.
We're not in control of how well, stock market does. I mean, if the stock market goes up, great. If it goes down, we just have no control over it. And so what I like to say is let's take control of the things we can control. And we can control a guaranteed income if we choose the right environment. And now, I got to say, 10 years ago, and I've been offering these products for over 15 years, but 10 years ago, you would never hear, an economist or a writer recommend an annuity.
I was about to say that, Christy. I was about to jump in and say, even when I first came to work with you back in late 08, early 09, no one talked about guaranteed income. You know why? Because the stock market was always going to go up 10% a year and everything was going to be fine, right?
Absolutely. And the problem is that, the 4% rule doesn't work any longer. We've read that time and time again. How many people have you run across that, their plan relied on those account values growing at 4 or 5% a year? We've seen even 7 and 8% a year. And that has not been realistic with our stock market over the last 10 years. And so our plans are designed to create that certainty. They're contractually guaranteed. And, you just can put that concern away.
Have a wonderful Labor Day weekend, folks. Don't hesitate to reach out to us at 791-5773 to schedule your free, no-obligation retirement consultation and learn about safeguarding your retirement. Our website is safemoneyplan.net. Have a great weekend.